Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel where we'll simplify Java concepts for you. Today we'll learn about different operators in Java. There are many different categories of operators like arithmetic operators, there are unary operators, we have assignment operators, then are relational operators, logical, bitwise, ternary and instance of operators. There are so many, but we'll cover the first two in this video, that is arithmetic and unary operators. Now, you may wonder Java is so huge, and to be honest, it actually is. But the best way to learn is to stop counting the number of pages in the book and just start with page 1 and move on. And it is practically impossible to remember each and everything, and that's not what your goal is, to cram everything in your memory, but you want to get good in figuring out the information. So let's get started. The first one is the plus operator, which is very simple. It simply adds the two numbers. Suppose your monthly expenses are rent of 5,000, groceries of 3,000 and travel expense for 2,000. So to find the total monthly expenses, you should use the addition or the plus operator. So let us switch to Eclipse. Okay, so we have these three variables, which is monthly rent, groceries and travel with their respective integer values. Now we'll add these three numbers together inside system.out.println method. So what we expect Java should do is to add all the three numbers and then blend the sum with this string, which is the total expenses are, but that is not exactly what is going to happen. So let us run this code and see. I'll click on this green button. Okay, so I'll see the output as total expenses are 15,000 followed by this 3,000 followed by this 2,000. So Java, instead of adding our three variables, it has joined or concatenated them together. So why has it happened? It's because in Java, addition happens from left to right. So I've written something for you so that you can understand it very clearly. So what I mean to do is, firstly, this number 2 is going to be concatenated with this string with this plus operator so that it becomes this, and then finally we are remaining with this 3. So now this 3 is now going to be concatenated with this remaining string and it becomes like this. So why it happened? It's because addition happens from left to right. It's actually not addition, it is actually concatenation, right? So we just saw that the plus operator behaves differently when we are trying to add two numbers versus when we try to add a number with a string. Then it no longer adds, it simply joins or concatenates them. Also, it starts from left to right. So to make our code work the way we want it to, we need to make some modifications. So instead of adding the variables after the string inside the println method, we can add them first and then concatenate the sum with the string. So let's create a new variable called int total expenses, and I'll add all these three variables: monthly sum, groceries plus travel. And notice that they are all in lower camel casing conventions. So I'll copy this line, I'll hit enter. So instead of adding these three variables, I'll simply add their sum here. Okay, and I'll also comment out this particular line. Perfect. So I'll run my program again, and this time let's see, the output is total expenses are 20,000, and this is the exact output that we're expecting. So why are we getting this correct output this time? It's because the plus operator has concatenated the two values, because one is a string and other is a number. We can also make our logic work inside the println method, just like how we were doing earlier. So we just need brackets to make our addition work. So let's comment out this line, and I'll uncomment this previous line, and we'll make this particular line work. So what we'll do is I'll simply add these brackets here like this. Okay, so what we are doing is we are instructing Java to add the numbers first and then add the resulting sum with this particular string. Okay, so let us rerun our code and we'll get the desired output. So I'll click on run and see, we get this output as total expenses are 20,000. Just by adding these brackets, we have made this code work. So remember to always use the brackets when performing mathematical operations inside the println method. Next, we have the minus operator. Okay, so I'll switch back to my whiteboard. Yeah, so minus operator, what it does, it simply subtracts the second operand from the first. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you buy a coffee for rupees 50 and pay with a 100 rupees note. So to find the change you should receive, you should use the minus operator. Okay, so I'll switch back to my Eclipse and we'll see this in action. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll use system.out.println. I'll do sysout, control space, hit enter. I'll write change I'll receive after paying for my coffee. So this is my string and I'll concatenate it with 100 minus 50. Okay, so we get an error here as we cannot use minus operator inside println method. So I'll simply bring my mouse. It says the operator minus is undefined for the argument type. Alright, so to make it work, we have to use brackets like this. Okay, so what it will do is firstly it will do the subtraction between these two numbers, and then the result will be concatenated with this particular string because of this plus operator. Alright, so I'll click on save, I'll hit run, and I get this output which is 50. Perfect. So next is we have the multiplication operator. Suppose if we have a rectangle which has a length of 10 meters and a width of 5 meters, so we can use the multiplication operator to find out the area. So we can do something like this. I'll go to my Eclipse and then I'll write sysout, control space, hit enter, and I'll write area of rectangle with a space. I'll do plus, I'll do 10 star 5. Oops. 10 star 5. Perfect. So as we have learned earlier, Java evaluates from left to right. So let us run this code and see. I'll save my code, click on the run button, and it shows the correct output, which is area of rectangle as 50. So the output is 50, which means it did the multiplication first, but we just learned that we have to use array brackets. Sorry, we have to use this normal brackets, like how we use them in this particular case of addition, or maybe in the case of subtraction here, right? Why is this opposite behavior now? It's because firstly the precedence of operators are considered. Okay, in India, in our earlier days, we have learned BODMAS, or if you are in US, you must have learned something like PEMDAS, where multiplication has a higher precedence than the addition. Okay, similarly in Java, the multiplication operator has a higher precedence than the plus operator, right? So technically we can use brackets, but they are not really required here, but we can still use them to make our code more readable. So I'll use these bracket symbols to make this code more readable. So I'll do command and S to save my code. Alright, so next is my division operator, or we can say a forward slash. Alright, so I'll switch to my Eclipse again. So suppose you go out to dinner with 4 friends and the total bill is of rupees 2000. So to find out how much each person has to pay, you can use the division operator. So we can say something like this: sysout, control space, hit enter. I'll do amount per person. I'll do space, I'll do plus, I'll do 2000 divided by 4. Alright, so just like multiplication operator, division operator, which is this forward slash, it has a greater precedence than this plus operator. So division will happen first, followed by this concatenation with this particular string. Okay, but again, for better readability, we can use brackets again here to make our code more clear that we are dividing first. So I'll put brackets again. It is kind of redundant, but it is actually going to make our code more readable. Right, so I'll save, I'll hit run, and I see this output as amount per person is 500, which is perfect. Now, if we change this number 2000 to 2001, okay, and now if we try to divide by 4, we'll get a fraction in the output, but since both 2001 and 4 are whole numbers, the result will be an integer division and the decimal part will be discarded. And we covered this particular part in detail in our last video, which is double data type in Java. Anyways, to be sure that we get the correct output, right, what we'll do is, let me hit save button and I'll see. See, again we're getting this output, which is incorrect now, right? So what I'll do is, we can use decimal in either this 2001 number or 4. I'll use a decimal here, 2001.0. Okay, I'll save my code, right? I'll hit run button, and this time I get the correct output as 500.25, which is the share of each person. Now, we get this correct output as one of our operand is now double data type. So the division will retain the fractional part also. Okay, so next is we have this modulus operator. So modulus operator is represented by this percentage sign on your keyboard. Okay, it returns the remainder of the division. Suppose you divide 100 by 10, you get 0 as the remainder. Now you must be wondering, why is this required? So let us see. I'll switch to Eclipse. I'll hit enter here and I'll write sysout, control space, hit enter. Okay, what I'll do is, okay, instead of system out println, let me do something else. I'll do int remainder equal to 100 percentage 10. We have used these spaces intentionally just to make our code more readable. Okay, otherwise it would have been more compact. Now, a little bit of math revision. Here, 100 is the dividend and 10 is the divisor, and remainder will be 0 because of this modulus operator. Okay, now you might be wondering, where do we actually use this modulus operator? Let me tell you. There are a few scenarios where using modulus operator is actually a must. For example, in order to determine if a number is actually even or odd, you can use the modulus operator. If a number is divided by 2, has a remainder of 0, it's even, otherwise it is odd. Can you think of any other scenario where we can use this modulus operator? There are actually so many. I want you to think about it. If yes, pause this video right now and enter your name and your answer in the comments below, and I'll give you a shout out. Okay, so I'll switch back to my whiteboard. Alright, so we have just covered the arithmetic operators, and before I proceed, I would like to ask you an honest feedback. How did you like this video? Please give me a like if you found it valuable, and let me know in the comments what's your name and where are you from. So next is we have another category of operators called as unary operators. So previously in arithmetic operators we have used plus, minus, multiply, division and percentage on 2 operands, or in some cases more than 2 operands. For example, we can add 3 numbers like a plus b plus c. Okay, but in the case of unary operators we have just one operand. So unary plus, this unary plus means indicates a positive value which is actually usually redundant. For example, so I'll switch to my Eclipse. So let me comment out all my previous code so that it becomes more simpler. So I'll comment out all this piece of code. Right, so what I'll do is I'll write int positive equal to plus 5 and semicolon. Right, so if we can see that my number 5 is automatically positive, so this using this plus operator is actually redundant or it's not really required. Right, so what I'll do is I'll go to here and we see we have this another unary operator called as unary minus. What it does is it negates an expression. So what I'll do is I'll come here, I'll write int negative equal to minus 10. Yeah, so this time in order to make this number as a negative number, I have to explicitly use this negative sign. But for positive numbers, it is not really required. Okay, next, I'll switch to whiteboard. So we have this increment and decrement operators. And beginners find it slightly difficult to understand as it has got a couple of variations, pre and post increment and pre and post decrement. Okay, so here's a simple piece of code to illustrate the concept. I have a variable with the value of 10 here. Okay, so in the first part of our code, we are using the pre-increment operator, which is plus plus a. So the pre-increment operator plus plus a, it increases the value of 1 before it is assigned to the variable, which is increment. Okay, so let us break it down. All right, so a starts as 10 and the pre-increment operator, which is plus plus a, it increases a to 11, which is increment by 1, and this new value 11 is then assigned to increment. So let me comment out the lines 36 till 38 and I'll execute this piece of code. Okay, so I've commented it, so I'll click on this run button and I can see this output as 11 and 11. Alright, so we can see that both a and increment are set to 11 now. So let us talk about the post increment operator, which is a plus plus or plus plus after any variable. So let me uncomment out these lines. Okay, done. So in the second part of our code, we use the post increment operator, which means we are using plus plus after the variable, which is a. In pre-increment, we use plus plus before the variable. Here in the post increment, we are using after the variable name. All right. So the post increment operator, which is a plus plus, it increases the value of a by 1, but after it's assigned to the variable increment. So let us break it down. In this piece of code, which is increment equal to a plus plus, a is currently at 11 from the previous increment, and the current value of a, which is 11, is now assigned to increment. But we are not incrementing the value of a by 1 yet. But after this assignment, which is increment equal to a plus plus happens, now a is incremented by 1, so it becomes 12 and increment stays as 11 only. Alright, so let me run this piece of code. I'll save it. I'll click on the run button. This time I get this output as 12 and 11. Okay, so here a is now 12, but the increment holds the value of 11 only because the increment happened after the assignment. So in summary, if we talk about the pre-increment or plus plus a, it increases the value of a before using it in expression, while in the case of post increment, it uses the value in the expression first and then it increments it. Let me give you another example to make this concept more clearer. Okay, so I have this piece of code. So let's say I have this counter variable which starts as 0, and then I'm incrementing this counter by 1 each time. So I'm doing counter plus plus semicolon. Okay, let me just do it couple of times. So I'll copy it, I'll paste it 3 times. Okay, and then I'm using sysout control. Okay, sysout, enter, and I'll do counter. Perfect. So if I'll run this piece of code, I'll comment out this piece of code. Okay, I'll run it now. So I'll get this output as 3. Okay, so here the output is 3 now because we are incrementing the counter variable 3 times, as we can see here. Okay, so instead of doing this plus plus here, we could have done like this. We could have done counter equal to counter plus 1. Okay, and then I could have copied it 3 times. Alright, but if we see, our previous code is more short and clean, and that's how we want to write our code in Java. So code should always be simple and more readable. Okay, so I'll save it, I'll click on the run, I'll get the same output. But as I mentioned, previous code is more simpler and cleaner. So I'll switch it back, I'll do Command Z. So I get this output as counter plus plus. Okay, so instead of using counter plus plus, we can also replace it with plus plus counter also. So I can remove this plus plus from here, which is post increment. I can make it like a pre increment like this. I'll do plus plus counter semicolon. I'll paste it here. I'll paste it here. All right, I'll hit the save button. Okay, so if I'll run this piece of code again, I'll get the same output, which is 3. It's because if we use plus plus counter or counter plus plus, it's one and the same thing. The difference will come when we assign the value to another variable, like how we did above. And you know what? I literally struggled initially to understand the difference between pre and post operators for a very long time, as my concepts were not clear. And here I am creating a video on this topic. So for beginners, you have a lot of hope. If I can learn and become a senior automation architect from a struggling Java programmer, you can learn it too. All you need is patience and a long-term commitment, right? So then we have pre and post decrement operators, which works exactly the same as the pre and post increment operators. So that's it for this video. In case you haven't checked out my earlier videos, I would recommend you to watch them, as all these videos are structured and it's a full-fledged Java course from scratch. And all these videos also come with detailed notes, which you can refer to refresh on the topics, and I'm sure you'll love them, and feel free to download them. Okay, so yeah. Here's the Java playlist that I'll recommend you to access and bookmark it in your browser for easy access, and it has all these videos in a very structured format. And I sincerely hope you have liked this particular video. Please like it if you found it valuable. It gives me happiness to see that people are getting value from my effort. Also, this actually helps this video to rank higher as per the YouTube algorithm, and consider subscribing for more technical content. And if you're liking my teaching style, please do share it on LinkedIn or with your friends, and stay tuned and happy learning. Piyush Gupta, your virtual coach, signing off.